Today we're going to focus on ideal gas laws, in which is chemistry. We're going to be focusing on how the particles behave in terms of looking at them, looking at the state of matters, how the particles behave when they are in solids, when they are in liquids, and then when they are in gases. And then from there we'll talk about kinetic molecular theory or collision theory. And then from here now, this is the concept why now we're going to be focusing on the major part of it. Major part of the topic is ideal gas laws. Now we're going to be talking about who is Boyle's law, Child's law, and Gay-Lussac's laws. So now let's move along and talk about state of matter. Now let's start by state of matter in here. Let's start about solids. Solids. In solids, we are saying that the particles in solids, they do what you call vibration. The particles in solids, they vibrate at a fixed point. They vibrate at a fixed point. The particles in solids. So what do we mean by that? We are saying that if I were to say that I have an ice, if you can take it and place it to maybe in a table or inside a container or somewhere else. So what is going to be happening is that solid is going to remain at its shape up until a certain temperatures is exposed to. But looking at that formation, we are saying that the solids, the particles on the solids, they vibrate on a fixed point. They don't move. They just stick on the same place, but they do what you call vibrate. So meaning that there is no movement of particles. There is no movement of particles in solids. Now let's talk about gases, about liquids. So when we talk about liquids, we are talking about the particles in liquids, they move at a constant rate. They also collide. They collide with each other at a rapid rate. But remember that when we talk about liquids, we're talking about, maybe you can talk about water, we can talk about oil, we can talk about anything that can flow. We're talking about liquids. But remember that solids, they don't flow. Solids, I'm talking about maybe the chalk, it's solid on its own. The particles here, they're not moving, they're just fixed at one point. And then there is no movement of particles inside this chalk. So now let's talk about, and then also before I go to gases, in liquids, the distance between them is constant or is not very far from each other. So they collide effectively here. So now let's talk about gases. When we talk about gases, we're talking about there is a very high movement of particles. The particles move at a very high rate, but the space in between them is very great. Spacing between the particles, the gas particles, is great. Great means bigger. I mean bigger. So the particles there, and also they collide at a very fast speed. They collide very fast speed. So we are saying that the solids, the particles in solids, they are very close to each other. They are packed with each other, and then the particles, they vibrate at a fixed point, meaning that there is no movement of particles in the solids form. And then in liquids, the movement is constant, and then as it is constant, the particles, they do also collide at a constant rate. And then when it comes to gases, the gases, there is a high movement. Gas, we are talking about what? We're talking about air. We are talking about, as long as we are talking about something that is not cannot flow or is not fixed at one point.